The Dakar Rally is known as one of the toughest and most grueling motorsport events in the world. It pushes both man and machine to their absolute limits, testing endurance, skill, and resilience across some of the harshest terrains imaginable. Think unforgiving deserts and treacherous dunes. With such brutal conditions, you'd think just finishing the rally would be an incredible achievement, let alone winning it. And you'd be right, but there was one vehicle that defied the odds and claimed victory not once, not twice, but 12 times. Knowing this, you might picture a menacing-looking, hyper-specialized off-roader with an over-the-top suspension setup and an arsenal of cutting-edge off-road modifications. But you'd be wrong. This Dakar-dominating monster looked more like your average family hauler. This vehicle's gone by many names over the years. When it was launched, it went by the Pajero, the Montero, and the Shogun. But in the decades that followed, Mitsubishi Motors showed the world that there was only one truly deserving title for this beast, the King of the Desert. Over the years, the Pajero proved that it's more than a vehicle to pile the groceries in. It's a monster capable of traversing mountains, swamps, and sand dunes with ease, and insane levels of reliability. This isn't just speculation. Since it first hit the road in 1982, it's conquered the grueling Dakar Rally a staggering 12 times in 26 appearances, including an era where it won a shocking 7 races in a row. If you're struggling to understand just why Mitsubishi's accomplishments are so incredible, you probably don't know enough about the Dakar Rally. It all began in 1977, when a Frenchman named Thierry Sabine found himself stuck in the desert. Sabine had been participating in the Abidjan-Nice Rally when he lost his way somewhere between Libya and Sudan, in a region of the northeastern Sahara. This was bad news, especially since it was the 1970s and rescue teams didn't have the technology they have today. To make matters worse, Sabine was equally unequipped. He didn't have much water, food, or even a compass. All he had for company was his trusty motorcycle and an amulet gifted to him by a friend. All that stretched before him was thousands of kilometers of sand and dunes. For 3 long days and 3 nights, Sabine was stuck in a region notorious for temperatures that cross 50 degrees Celsius during an average summer day and dropping well below freezing on a typical winter night. Finally, 72 hours later, an Algerian Air Force plane managed to locate and rescue him. Sabine was promptly returned to France, motorcycle, amulet, and all. Once there, you would assume the Frenchman would want nothing to do with the desert again. After all, he'd been stuck in a situation most of us wouldn't wish on our worst enemies. But Sabine was different. Life had thrown him a very sour lemon, and he was about to make lemonade. Upon his return to civilization, he spoke with great passion about the place he almost died in. He didn't recount seeing mirages or oases, but instead outlined a very real vision that had appeared before him. A rally route through the desert. A route guaranteed to break spirits and even the most well-crafted vehicles. That's right, he spent 3 days stuck in the desert and thought this would be the ideal place to test the might of a future motorsport champion. He created a plan for what, in the following year, would become the infamous Paris-Dakar Rally, or Dakar Rally as it's known today. This rally would be the ultimate test of endurance and speed, beginning in Paris and ending on the Atlantic coast of Africa, in Senegal's capital, Dakar. It's said that it takes a grain of sand to create a pearl. In Sabine's view, the vast expanse of the desert would create the crown jewels of motorsport. He wasn't wrong. The year after his rescue, in 1978, 182 vehicles lined up by the Eiffel Tower in Paris, ready to take on the challenge. Vehicles range from motorcycles to passenger cars and even large trucks. The competitors, meanwhile, were made up of amateurs and professionals alike. Anyone up for an adventure, and with a mild death wish, was encouraged to join. In case it wasn't apparent enough already, this rally was going to be a challenge unlike any other these drivers had faced. Ahead of them lay 10,000 kilometers of harsh terrain, spanning the countries of France, Algeria, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Senegal. These roads weren't freshly paved with asphalt. They were made up of dirt tracks and dunes that would change course multiple times over the 2 to 3 week event. Drivers and navigators were essentially expected to traverse the route with little to no mechanical assistance or food. They'd have to battle fierce climate conditions while charting a course with nothing but a compass and the stars for direction. It would be the ultimate proving ground for manufacturers itching to show the world their finest creations. Each vehicle would have to be equipped with advanced temperature control features, as well as lightweight components that would allow them to reach tremendous speeds through dunes, tropical jungles, tall mountains, and swamps. At this point, the only thing that could make this rally tougher for participants and manufacturers is if they were expected to solve a Sphinx's riddle and battle the Scorpion King to the line. It was this unachievable challenge that Japanese manufacturer Mitsubishi set out to conquer, and conquer they did. The story of the Pajero began soon after the Second World War, when Mitsubishi Motors was one of the few that was tapped and licensed to build Jeeps by the American automobile company Willys Overland Motors. The Japanese manufacturer rose to the occasion, and over the next few decades created over 30 Jeep models for both military and civilian use. This became a pivotal period for Mitsubishi, which started out in the 1870s as a shipbuilding company that ventured into Japan's first series of production automobiles in the early 1900s. From there, it expanded into making aircraft, ships, and railroad cars well into the World War II era. There was no stopping its journey, and it would soon dominate not just roads, but impossible terrains decades down the road. In the decades that followed, a team of talented individuals sat huddled, penning several designs before landing on a groundbreaking four-wheel drive off-road SUV prototype. Further iterations would transform into a promising passenger car capable of reaching impressive speeds and unexpected levels of durability. It would be called the Montero in South America and the Shogun in the UK, but the rest of the world would know it as the Pajero. The Pajero was first unveiled at the Tokyo Motor Show in 1981 and went into production in 1982. A short year later, it had already earned a reputation for its off-roading capabilities, comfortable interiors, and exceptional handling. It also became a hot commodity in Japan, but Mitsubishi wasn't content with simply conquering the local market. It wanted this SUV to go global. And there was no better marketing campaign than the Dakar Rally. The grueling event would be ideal to test the Pajero's limits and drive sales in key international markets. So, while the 1983 Dakar would begin, like previous editions, in Paris, the Pajero's journey began a lot further away, in Mitsubishi's Kyoto plant. To prepare the car for the staggering challenge ahead, the SUV's base model was fitted with a 2.6-liter gasoline engine producing 140 horsepower and 195 newton-meters of torque. The car's exhaust system was swapped out, and a reinforced clutch was installed. The car was then shipped over to the Société Bernard Montgret, a French racing outfit contracted by Sonado, Mitsubishi's import agent in France. There, further tweaks were made to the body. The chassis was reinforced, and additional safety equipment was implemented. Eventually, on the day of the rally, 4 Pajeros were entered in a class of vehicles that allowed for only a few modifications to the production cars. Essentially, it was still almost the same sensible car the manufacturer was selling to the average Japanese family. Of course, as it turns out, this rally would be quite the opposite of sensible and average. The 1983 rally was the first time in 5 editions that Dakar contenders would be expected to cross a 700-kilometer stretch of the Tenere Desert, an iconic location that's become synonymous with the rally itself. What's more, the total route down to Dakar stretched out over 9,257 kilometers, nearly half of which was made up of competitive stages. Drivers were expected to complete this staggering journey with no rest days in the middle. Think about the toll even 30 minutes sitting in traffic takes on your body. Now, picture driving 10 hours straight for multiple days with no breaks and in much harsher conditions. Then, there were the elements to contend with. During the rally, a massive sandstorm in the Tenere Desert waylaid 40 competitors, many of whom, much like Thierry Sabine, took up to 4 days to find their way back. It's no wonder then that only about 30% of those who entered the race eventually reached the finish line. But it's in this challenging environment that we're able to see flashes of Mitsubishi's brilliance. Considering it was the manufacturer's debut run, it was impressive to even see a Pajero finish. But it was nothing short of a miracle when the car piloted by UK's Andrew Cowan actually managed to win the non-modified production car category. So, while the spoils that year may have gone to Mercedes and legend Jackie Ickx, all eyes were locked on Mitsubishi. The manufacturer was awarded the Best Team prize and scored an impressive overall 11th in a field of 385 entrants. Little did we know then that this was just a very humble start to a spectacular journey of dominance that would last for the next 25 years. After marking its debut, Pajero was determined to slowly build on its success. Following another impressive showing in 1984, when the team finished an overall third with a turbocharged version of the previous prototype, the stage was firmly set for the 1985 Dakar Rally, and Mitsubishi's first attempt at entering a modified Pajero. This new prototype was based on the production car but underwent significant changes back at the Tokyo factory. It was fitted with an advanced front shaft that extended the wheelbase and improved the weight balance. Body panels were reinforced with Kevlar fiber, which brought the car's weight down by a staggering 200 kilograms. The rear suspension was changed to improve handling, while the turbocharged 2.6-liter engine delivered over 220 horsepower and enabled a top speed of 185 kilometers per hour. The drivers handed the keys included British driver Andrew Cowan, who was following up on his two previous impressive finishes, and a Frenchman named Patrick Zanaroli, who had earned second place at the previous rally in a Range Rover. For that year, the route was slightly modified. This time, contenders would have to cross the Tenere Desert twice, covering a total distance of over 10,000 kilometers in 22 days. Competition was fierce, too. The 552 entrants included iconic cars like the Audi Quattro, the Range Rover, and a car that's become synonymous with the Dakar Rally, the Porsche 959. The Dakar had become so popular that nearly 70,000 motorsport fans gathered in Versailles, where the race began. During the early stages, the favorite, Porsche, slipped back after suffering mechanical issues. This left the door open for an Opel Manta to take the lead. But the Mitsubishi driven by Zanaroli stayed close behind, breathing down the Opel's neck in second place. This persistence paid off, as the Opel eventually made a few mistakes and suffered from an engine issue during the second half of the race. A flawless performance by the two Mitsubishi drivers allowed them to take the lead and eventually finish in first and second. A third Pajero driven by Japanese driver Yosuke Natsuki retired just 900 kilometers from the end. But a privately entered Pajero went on to take victory in the non-modified production car and marathon classes. It was an incredible achievement, considering this was just the manufacturer's third attempt at this insane rally. Already by this point, Mitsubishi had proved everything it had set out to. Their car was evidently reliable, even when driven on difficult terrain, but it also had the speed to back it up and take on giants like Porsche and Range Rover. In only its third year, Pajero had begun receiving global recognition. In the years following these first successes, Mitsubishi remained a fierce competitor, consistently finishing in the top few spots for the remainder of the 80s, but it didn't secure another overall victory, mainly due to the incredible rise of Team Peugeot. As the 90s rolled around, however, a new rivalry began brewing. Team Citroën started the decade off strong with a win in 1991, courtesy of a stellar performance by Ari Vatanen. The following year, Mitsubishi came prepared to hit back, introducing a modified version of the 1991 model that was even more durable. As it turns out, this reliability would come in handy, since this version of the Dakar Rally would be a little different. For one, it wouldn't end in Senegal, but extend all the way down to Cape Town in South Africa. To get there, cars would have to traverse nearly 12.5 thousand kilometers, 11 countries, and almost the entirety of the African continent. On the way, they would pass through the tropics, the savanna, and of course, a desert. In fact, this rally route was so demanding that some sections scheduled for Chad had to be canceled due to safety issues. While several vehicles complained that the frontrunners had blown up such heavy clouds of dust that it was impossible for them to compete. The extra boost of reliability also came in handy for Mitsubishi in its battle with Citroën. As the French outfit suffered from a host of engine issues, Mitsubishi was able to claim its second overall victory, as well as secure a rare 1-2-3 ahead of the fourth competing Citroëns. A magnificent showing, but far from its last. All through the following decade, the battle between the two manufacturers persisted. Barring 1994, when Mitsubishi withdrew from the event following a series of calamities on the Dunes of Death, one of the two manufacturers remained consistently on the podium until 1996, the end of the prototype era. In 1997, a regulation change offered Mitsubishi the chance to showcase its innovative spirit again. The team wasted no time in introducing a newly developed Pajero based on its second-generation prototype. By the end of the roughly 7,500-kilometer rally, Mitsubishi had secured the top 4 positions. It was the first team to ever achieve such a feat in the history of the Dakar. To make the victory sweeter, Japanese driver Kenjiro Shinozuka, who entered his 12th rally, finally managed to take the top step of the podium and became the first Japanese driver to secure an overall win at the Dakar. With this victory, Mitsubishi had bettered its rivals and set the stage for an onslaught that no one was really expecting. 1998 was the year things completely changed at the Mitsubishi factory. Homologation rules had come into effect the previous year, meaning that to put on a solid show at the competitive T2 class, the manufacturer would also have to create a road-going version of the car they wanted to compete with. Despite winning the previous edition with the Pajero 2, it decided to take up the challenge. Enter the Pajero Evo, one of the most powerful and beautiful homologation models to have ever existed. This car was equipped with a 3.5-liter V6 engine that produced 276 horsepower and 256 pound-feet of torque. Well, the official specifications say 276 horsepower anyway, although this is likely the result of a gentleman's agreement in Japan not to advertise horsepower higher than that. The real figure was probably closer to 300. It was a car way ahead of its time, and one with the potential to stand up to some of today's powerful SUVs. Unfortunately, the homologation Evo was only sold between 1997 and 1999, and only about 2,500 models ever hit the road. In the 1998 Paris-Grenada Dakar Rally, we saw exactly why this car was so desirable. At the finish line, 3 Pajeros, piloted by Jean-Pierre, Kenjiro Shinozuka, and Bruno Sabi, occupied the top 3 steps of the podium. A Mitsubishi Challenger finished close behind in 4th, cementing the fact that the manufacturer had figured out how to crack the Dakar Rally code. The next 2 years, subsequent editions of the Pajero closely lost out to Jean-Louis Schlesser's insane creation, the Schlesser Buggy. But come 2001, it was clear there would be no car as dominant as the Pajero in the rally's history. That year, the manufacturer broke the first of several records it would go on to shatter in the coming years, with one of its drivers, Jutta Kleinschmidt, becoming the first woman to win the Dakar Rally. In the following 2 years, Hiroshi Masuoka became the first Japanese driver to win consecutive editions of the Dakar Rally, while in 2004, a super production specification version of the Pajero secured a 1-2 courtesy of drivers Stefan Petterhansel and Hiroshi Masuoka. 2005 was the same story, Mitsubishi in 1st and in 2nd. 2006, Mitsubishi in 1st and 3rd. And so the glorious run went on till 2007, when Stefan Petterhansel secured Pajero's 7th consecutive victory and a 12th for Mitsubishi in 26 appearances. Such was the dominance of this vehicle that, at one point, there were 60 independent Mitsubishis entered into a single edition of the rally, cars that often won both the production and modified production classes. In 2008, as security concerns shifted the rally to South America, Mitsubishi put all its eggs in the Lancer, and the Pajero was allowed to exit on a high. The vehicle went on to see success in other off-road rallies, including the Australasian Safari and the Australian Off-Road Racing Championship. But at the Dakar Rally, clearly the world's hardest endurance race, it remained unbeaten. So the next time you see a Pajero driving down the roads of your city or town, just think back at what this vehicle managed to achieve, and maybe you'll see it in a new light.